The water is just water. That is the first thing you need to understand about liquid death. There is nothing special about what is inside the can. It is water. Municipal water sources, filtered, carbonated, or still, the same water you could get from a dozen other brands for a third of the price. And yet, Liquid Death became a billion-dollar company. One man. A $1,500 commercial. Zero product in existence. 3 million views. $100,000 in sales in the first month. And every serious investor who heard the pitch said the exact same thing. This is the dumbest idea they had ever seen. They were wrong. This is the story of how a mod magazine kid from punk bands in Colorado figured out something the entire beverage industry had missed, and built a brand worth more than most professional sports franchises selling canned water. Mike Cessario did not grow up wanting to sell water. He grew up wanting to make people laugh. As a kid, an older cousin gave him a collection of Mad magazines. He devoured them. Crass, vulgar, funny, self-aware. That combination became his aesthetic for the next 3 decades. He played guitar in punk bands, designed the flyers and album covers for the shows, and eventually enrolled at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California, studying graphic design and then advertising. He had one goal. He wanted to make people laugh, and advertising seemed like the only industry that paid you to do it. The beverage industry is one of the most efficient elimination systems in consumer goods history. Coca-Cola and PepsiCo control the majority of refrigerated shelf space in grocery stores through exclusivity agreements and placement fees that make it nearly impossible for an independent brand to get traction. The average new beverage brand survives 18 months, not because the product was bad, because it could not get on the shelf. And even if it did, it was invisible next to brands with billion-dollar marketing budgets. Cessario did not plan to fight this system. He planned to make a brand so culturally loud that the system would come to him instead. Early in his career, working at ad agencies across the country, Cessario absorbed a philosophy from studying Richard Branson and Virgin America that would become the backbone of everything he later built. Find the stalest category you can identify. Enter it as the one interesting, disruptive, genuinely different product in the space. Do not compete with the category leaders on their terms. Make the entire category look boring by comparison. He tested this theory at a firm in Nashville while working on a campaign for Organic Valley protein shakes. Their brief was targeting gym bros, a demographic the healthy food brand had never spoken to before. Cessario pitched Save the Bros, a parody campaign about rescuing men from artificial protein chemicals. The client almost killed it before launch. When it went live, it went completely viral. Then came 2009. A friend put Cessario on the backstage list for the Vans Warped Tour in Denver, Colorado. It was summer, it was hot, and he noticed something.
Just right here, it says contents, ultra purified water.
Every band performing was chugging what looked like Monster Energy all day long. He got closer, looked more carefully at the can, and then he saw it. Underneath the word Monster, instead of energy, it read Monster Tour Water. Monster had created a special product. Water packaged in Monster cans, so the bands could actually stay hydrated in the heat without drinking the sugar and caffeine from the energy drink they were supposed to be endorsing. They were drinking water the whole time, and the audience had no idea. That moment planted something in Cessario's mind that would take a decade to fully grow. Every band drinks water. Why wouldn't there be a water that from a brand standpoint is actually cool? He noticed something else at that same festival, and through years of advertising work that followed. The funniest, most memorable, most culturally relevant branding in the world was for junk food. Bud Light, Dos Equis, Snickers, Doritos, Red Bull. The entire humor budget of consumer advertising went to products that were either bad for you or neutral at best. The health and wellness industry, water, vitamins, protein, natural snacks, had built a visual language so repetitive and sanitized it had become invisible. Clean white packaging, soft green fonts, words like pure, natural, revitalize, images of mountains and athletes in sunlight. Invisible means ignored. And there was one audience that had never been spoken to at all, the people who actively rejected that aesthetic. Metalheads, skaters, punk fans, festival crowds, people who had spent decades building a visual identity around darkness, rebellion, and the skull. They were chronically dehydrated. No water brand had ever tried to speak their language. That was the gap. Cessario eventually landed at a marketing agency running campaigns for Netflix, viral teasers for House of Cards, promotional work for Stranger Things. He was good at it, but the idea kept developing in the back of his mind. He had spent years in advertising watching brands try to be cool and fail. He had identified the gap, and he had a framework for entering it. The question was whether anyone would believe the idea was viable. Here is what Cessario understood that most brand builders never figure out. The skull was not a logo he invented. It was a symbol that already existed, already had decades of meaning, already had a massive loyal audience. It was on thousands of leather jackets, on belt buckles, on patches sewn into vests worn every day for 30 years. The skull in that community is not a symbol of death. It is a symbol of identity, of refusal to be sanitized, of belonging to something the mainstream finds uncomfortable. Cessario did not create that identity. He simply asked, what if that symbol was on a water bottle? He was not building for himself. He was building for people he had observed. Most founders build what they want. Cessario built what was missing. So he ran an experiment before there was a product, before there was a company, before a single can had been manufactured. He commissioned a three-dimensional render of a can from a designer on a freelance platform. He shot a 60-second commercial for $1,500. A woman appears on screen and declares she is a paid actress.
Actor, and I'm getting paid to tell you about a revolutionary new product.
She then explains with complete seriousness that water is deadly. It kills surfers, snowboarders, kayakers every year, while she is visibly waterboarding a man with liquid death the entire time. Then he spent $2,000 to $3,000 pushing the video on Facebook over 3 to 4 months. That was the entire investment. 0 cans produced, 0 inventory, 0 company. The results were unlike anything he had seen in years of professional marketing. The video reached 3 million views. The Liquid Death Facebook page accumulated 80,000 followers, more than Aquafina at the time. People were commenting asking where they could buy it. A 7-Eleven franchisee from Michigan sent a message asking how to stock it in his stores. Cessario had proof of concept before he had spent $1 on manufacturing. He used that data to raise a seed round. The investors who came in included Biz Stone, co-founder of Twitter, total seed funding, $1.6 million. He found the water supplier in Austria by searching on Google. And in January 2019, 2 years after the original Facebook post, Liquid Death became a real product. The first month of sales produced $100,000 in revenue. The marketing budget that month was $2,000. They sold out completely. They had not ordered nearly enough inventory to meet demand and were out of stock for over a month. The first major retailer to approach them was Whole Foods. They love the death to plastic positioning. Aluminum cans are infinitely recyclable. Plastic bottles are not. And Liquid Death had built an entire activist campaign around it. They were mailing empty plastic bottles back to Coca-Cola and Pepsi at their own expense, paying the postage for fans who wanted to participate. Whole Foods said they wanted to go full national immediately. The launch date was set, March 15th, 2020. The exact week the pandemic lockdown started, they loaded into 6,700 Whole Foods locations the same week America shut down. And somehow, it worked. Revenue grew from $2.8 million in year 1 to $45 million in 2021 to a projected $130 million by end of year. But the numbers only tell part of the story. What was surprising to almost everyone, including Cessario, was how wide the audience turned out to be. Hundreds of parents wrote in to say their 9-year-old was finally excited to drink water instead of soda because the child thought they were getting away with something. Construction workers who normally bought 2 energy drinks at 7-Eleven started buying 1 energy drink and 1 Liquid Death. Sober adults at parties could hold a can that looked like a beer and skip the explanation. The skull had turned out to be not a niche signal, but a universal one. The data from that first month confirmed something Cessario had suspected, but could not prove until the product existed. People were not buying Liquid Death because of what was inside the can. The water was fine, Austrian mountain water, clean and filtered, but it was not meaningfully different from a dozen competitors. People were buying what the can said about them. Carrying a Liquid Death was a statement. You were the person who made the healthy choice but refused to look like you were trying. That identity was worth a premium over every other water in the aisle, and it turned out an enormous number of people wanted exactly that. The brand kept moving. Every stunt was designed to be shared rather than consumed. Tony Hawk did not sign a standard endorsement deal. He donated his blood, which was mixed into the paint used on a limited edition skateboard deck. It sold out immediately. They partnered with Martha Stewart, whose domestic perfection was the exact opposite of everything Liquid Death stood for. And the contrast was the point. They released sparkling water flavors with names that made the naming committee of every other beverage brand look like it was not trying. Mango Chainsaw, Severed Lime, Buried Alive. Each name was a complete brand statement. Each one generated press. The merchandise line, shirts, hats, stickers, snare drums branded with the logo, became its own revenue stream. $3 million in apparel in a single year. A water company generating $3 million in clothing. The brand had become the product. Then came the hate comments. Liquid Death attracts a significant volume of online hostility. People who have never tried it and never will write lengthy explanations of why it is stupid, overpriced, or offensive. The brand's response was to collect the most aggressive hate comments and turn them into lyrics. They commissioned an in-house metal band, recorded an actual album, and released it on vinyl. Track titles included It's Dumb, I Won't Buy It, Worst Name for a Water Company, and You Deserve Your Mouth Pissed In. The album was real, it was good, and it made every person who had posted the original comment an unwilling collaborator in a piece of content that further proved the brand's point. When the Arnold Palmer estate sent a cease and desist letter over Liquid Death's iced tea flavor named Armless Palmer, arguing infringement on the famous golfer's legacy, Liquid Death did not fight it. They renamed the product. The new name, Dead Billionaire. Every customer who asked why the name changed got the full story. The cease and desist that was meant to shut them down became a piece of marketing no budget could have produced. This pattern, converting every act of resistance into a content opportunity, is not accidental. It is the operating philosophy of the company. The New Yorker published a piece titled Liquid Death and the Nonsense of Packaged Water, attacking the brand's sustainability claims and arguing the product was essentially environmental theater. The article was detailed, well-researched, and genuinely critical. Liquid Death's response was to share it everywhere. Every attack became a promotion. Every critic became a distributor. The logic was simple. The people who already loved Liquid Death were not going to be convinced by a New Yorker piece that they had been making a mistake. And everyone else who read the article and had never heard of the brand now knew exactly what it was. Controversy, properly handled, is indistinguishable from advertising. Cessario has said it directly. Liquid Death is an entertainment company that also sells water, not a water company that also does marketing. The distinction matters. An entertainment company measures success by whether it keeps an audience engaged. A water company measures success by quarterly revenue. The moment you run Liquid Death like a water company is the moment you start making the decisions that kill it. The moment you optimize the humor for broad appeal, soften the skull for mainstream retail expansion, turn down the aggression to avoid controversy. That is the moment the brand stops working. And Cessario knows this because he watched it happen to Monster Energy after Coca-Cola's investment. He watched the edge soften. He watched the authenticity dilute. He has consistently turned down acquisition offers. Whether that holds as the valuation climbs and the pressure from early investors to exit increases, that is the question nobody can answer yet. At one point, $4 billion, Liquid Death is now in over 100,000 retail locations. That is not a niche brand. That is a mainstream product wearing the costume of a niche brand. And the most interesting tension in its future is whether the costume can survive at that scale. The environmental positioning is real, but incomplete. Aluminum mining carries its own substantial cost. And if that gap becomes a story, the brand is exposed in the exact place it claimed to be, different. The IPO conversation is coming. The acquisition offers keep arriving. The investors who came in early are asking when they get paid. All of these forces pull in the same direction, toward the center, toward safety, toward the sanitized wellness aesthetic that Cessario built the entire company to resist. Here is the final argument. What Liquid Death figured out is something that sounds simple and is almost impossible to execute. Water is neutral. There is no good water and no bad water. There is nothing to feel about water. And yet, Liquid Death made millions of people feel something about their specific water. Love it or hate it, you feel something. And that is the entire business. You can monetize something. You cannot monetize nothing. The investors who called this the dumbest idea in beverage history were not wrong to question whether identity alone could sustain a company. They were wrong about the outcome, because the outcome was not about water at all. It was about whether one person's conviction, about humor, about rebellion, about treating an audience like it was smart enough to be in on the joke, could survive long enough to become a billion-dollar brand. So far, it has. The question is whether it can survive becoming one. There is also the question of what comes next for the product itself. Liquid Death started as canned water. It added sparkling water, then flavored sparkling water, with names the brand's naming committee clearly enjoyed: Mango Chainsaw, Severed Lime, Buried Alive, then Iced Tea. Each new product was not just a beverage extension, it was a brand extension. Each name was a miniature content strategy. Each launch gave the internet a new reason to talk about a can of water. The merchandise line followed the same logic. $3 million in apparel in a year. Shirts, hats, stickers, snare drums bearing the skull. A brand of water generating more clothing revenue than most clothing brands. If you measure Liquid Death purely as a beverage company, none of this makes sense. If you measure it as an entertainment company that manufactures beverages as its primary content, it makes perfect sense.